morning. This is the end of year training for 2022. And we've got several things on the agenda today. So I want to just start off by saying, first of all, I apologize for starting a little bit late, but people were still coming in and I didn't want anybody to miss anything. And I just want to say, if you have questions when we're going through this, please feel free to type it into the chat, or later when I ask for questions, you can unmute and ask. We're still waiting for a few more KDE people to show up, so they had another meeting this morning, so I think I'll go ahead and get started without them, but then they'll join us in a few minutes. Okay, so again, this is the end of year training for 2022. This is our agenda. We have the welcome, which is right now. I'm glad you guys were able to make it. Again, I apologize for all the craziness of getting it set up. We've just been really busy, and it's just been hard to get everything in. Once travel started again, it seems to have been going full force, so I've been all over the place. We're going to talk about determinations, we're going to talk about resources, and of course I am going to talk about reporting, as I always do. And I don't think Jackie's on just yet, so we'll give her just a few minutes, but she'll come back. She'll be here in literally just a few minutes, and what she can talk about determinations.
I'm actually here. I do want to talk about, if you want me to go ahead.
Is what?
I'm actually here if you want me to go ahead.
Oh, you are? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then go for it.
All right. Screen's not showing everybody. Sorry about that.
Oh, my fault. I got it now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So first, thank you all for joining us today. I know it's not easy to step away from your daily activities to attend this meeting. So we do appreciate you taking the time to be here. And so we will try to make it as informative but concise as possible as we're going through this. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was determinations. And so you may have heard from the Kentucky CEC conference. We had a session introducing the new determination system. We've released a couple webcasts about the new determination system. And so that information has been coming out to you all. And but we're going to launch into a pivot of this new determination system at this time. And so I do want to be a little bit clear about that. We're not stopping the LEA annual determinations because that's a federal requirement. But what we are doing is, based on conversations we've had with stakeholders and with many of you, then we are going to pivot the direction that we've been going in. And so this means your district will not receive a determination finding based on that new determination system this year. Instead, the determination system will remain the same as it has for the past few years. And we hope that you see that this pivot is responsive to the feedback that you've been providing to us. But if you need any additional clarifications about that, then please reach out to me. I know it's a shift, and some of you are probably super excited, and I know others were excited to have a results-based accountability system really driven home in this determinations, the new system. However, with this pivot, then we're definitely going to be able to take some time to get more feedback and to provide more trainings for the following year. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and we will continue to be responsive and to any additional ideas that you have.
Thank you, Jackie. So again, I want to just reiterate what Jackie said. Again, I appreciate you all taking time out of your day to be here. Even if you're not here in person, if you're going to be watching the recording, I really appreciate being able to give the same message to everyone and know it's being heard. So thank you. So I'm I'm going to turn off my camera and move on to the next thing. So I just want to show you some resources that we have available. And so one of the items that I have done trainings on and some other things I've talked about several times is the dashboard that we have available for special education in Kentucky. And we are going to be launching a new piece of this probably in the next couple of months that will have indicator data in it. It won't have all indicator data in it just yet, but that is our goal, is to get all of the indicator data. But I just want to show you, just remind you that this dashboard is here and it can help you look at your child count data and your environmental data and your disabilities and your race and those sorts of things by district and by state and by co-op and RTC. So that's something that I wanted to remind you is out there. And again, when we have the new piece of this, I will do another training and I'll roll it out statewide. But I really appreciate, I don't know if Molly's on here, but I really appreciate Molly Sir and all the work she's done for us to get this going and make it accessible, and just we're really excited about what we can offer with this and about the opportunities it will provide for districts to be able to look at their data individually and compare it to others and compare it to state data and just the decision-making pieces that can come out of that. Another item I want to show you is the public reporting page. So we have the public reporting page here. We don't have the 2020 data tables up yet because we are still in the clarification period with OSEP, but they will be up by June 1st, probably sooner. We have the targets that we have set by year for each of the indicators right here where it says Kentucky target setting. And at the bottom, we have child count and educational environment data. So we have all of our public reporting right here. And then we also have another page under district resources called Special Education Resources for Using Infinite Campus. And if you go there, and we've got the end of year reporting date, or actually all the reporting dates here. We have links to videos on the right-hand side. This one will go here, and it'll be emailed out. We have our data standards down here. Those are in the process of being updated. There's, I believe, the most recent record review document here. So, and then a link to the dashboard is here as well, and some other items. So this is something that Joe and I have been working on over the past several years, and I really hope to keep this up and add more resources to it. We have something I do want to show you is down here on the right-hand side at the bottom. It says Part B, State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report Indicator Measurement Table. And this is actually straight from OSEP, and it is a link to the actual measurement table that explains how we do the calculations for each of the indicators. So that's something you might want to take a look at. And then of course, we have the end of year reporting here and our dashboard training. So those are some things that I think might be useful to you. Is that where this goes? Yeah. So some other, just some items that might be useful to you as we go along. And if there's anything, if you have suggestions of items I can put there, I'm happy to do that as well. But I hope to continue updating that over the next few months. Okay, so for reporting, some of the upcoming submission dates that we have, June 30th, we have indicators 11, 12, and 13. And we are, yes, you see 12 there. We are adding that to the indicator 11 and 13 spreadsheet. The only report that I have suggested here, actually, I probably should have put one more, but this tells you how to get to the indicator 11 data. To get to the indicator 13 data, you want to run the QA SPED report, or you can run the child count report and then just filter it for only kids ages 16 and older. And then you are going, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, and you're going to select your 10% of those students on each of those reports. The personnel data is going to be submitted in GMAP. It's due June 30th. The Safe Schools report is due June 30th. The exiting data is due July 31st. And these are not new dates. So nothing has changed here. And then December 2nd is the Friday after December 1st. So December 1st is on a Thursday this year. I will be talking about that obviously more in the beginning of year training, but I just wanted to let you guys know that's the Friday before December 1st. So we're actually going to pull the data on December 5th, first, like 4 a.m. But remember, no changes made after December 2nd will be reflected in the report. So you need to make sure everything is good and ready to go by 5 o'clock or maybe 4 o'clock on December 2nd. Okay, indicator 12. Jackie, is that you or is Lauren on here?
Lauren's on.
Okay. I want to introduce Lauren Thieneman. Sorry, I do that every time. She is our new SPP APR coordinator, and she is awesome, and we're very happy to have her here. So I'll go ahead and let you talk.
Good morning. So as Amy said, I am kind of coordinating the SPP APR. And for indicator 12, there's going to be a few changes for this upcoming year. Amy Mays will be the indicator lead for 12, but she couldn't be with us today. So I'm kind of going to go through, walk you all through some of those changes. So as you all know, indicator 12 is a compliance indicator that relates to early childhood transition. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what it measures. So it's any students that are referred by Part C prior to age 3, who are then found eligible for Part B, or who have an individualized education program developed and implemented by their 3rd birthday. All right, so there's kind of 6 components of indicator 12. Part A looks at the number of children who have been served in Part C and then referred to Part B and found eligible. Section B is the number of those referred determined to be not eligible and whose eligibility was determined prior to their 3rd birthdays. C is looking at the number of those students found eligible who have an IEP developed and implemented by their 3rd birthdays. D looks at the number of children for whom a parent refused to provide consent, which then caused delays in evaluation or initial services, or any kind of exceptions that may apply. Section E, the number of children who were referred to Part C fewer than 90 days before their 3rd birthdays. And then there is Section F, which we will not, I'm going to talk a little bit more about as we go on, but that's the number of children whose parents chose to continue early intervention services beyond the child's 3rd birthday through a state's policy. And Kentucky doesn't really have that policy, so that is likely going to be 0 in your district. If it's not, then that will be an issue Amy will walk you through. So as I said, this is a compliance indicator, so we are looking to be at 100%. So you may remember previously indicator 12 data, you all were sent a Google form, you filled that out, and we have found, and some of you have reported that it was a complicated system. After the surveys were submitted, then we had to reach back out for SSID numbers after each survey. So we're hoping this new method will clean some of that up for you all and for us as well. So as Amy Patterson mentioned, it's going to look very similar to what we have already been doing for indicators 11 and 13. You will be self-reporting in a very similar spreadsheet as what you already use for 11 and 13. And then SSIDs will be readily available to us as we're monitoring. So as I said, that part F section of indicator 12, that is the number of children whose parents chose to continue early intervention services. And like I said, we don't do that in the state of Kentucky. It's very infrequently used unless there's a very special circumstance. And it's only accepted when it's indicated by First Steps for compensatory education. So if you think you may have one of those kids that falls in F, you want to make sure that you're reaching out to your First Steps coordinator. Jackie?
And I will add that we left F on there for a couple of reasons, because before COVID, we really didn't see the F component of that very much because it was very rare that a student was offered compensatory services in First Step. However, with COVID, then we saw that more often. And so we did leave F there, and some of the clarifications that districts sent in last year with the indicator 12 indicated that that service was used by First Steps, but also there's some federal funding things that have been going through, and depending on how that rolls out will be whether or not F will continue for those what they call summer birthdays, so those April through the end of school year birthdays, of whether or not that federal funding will impact whether or not those students can actually stay in First Steps. So we did go ahead and leave that in there just in case. That way you're already used to the process. So even if you were putting 0 for this year, it may change in the future.
So this is what the spreadsheet looks like. I just wanted to show it to you. These are actually just numbers that you're going to put in here, and then it'll result in a calculation down here. And then for students who did not have an IEP developed and implemented by their third birthdays, this is where we're asking you to enter the information, the SSID, and all of the information that we need. Do you want to say anything else about this one, Lauren?
I was just going to say Amy Mays has done a wonderful webcast for you all to walk you through step by step the directions, which will be available very soon to you all.
Okay.
And then one last thing about indicator 12, we do realize that, you know, as districts are using a variety of methods to track student data. So a couple things about that. So you all know you're responsible for collecting your own Part C data throughout the school year. And you get that from a variety of sources, which may include your quarterly report that KDE sends from the Kentucky Early Intervention System, also known as First Steps. But that list might not be all inclusive, as families aren't required to grant permission that their child's name be shared with KDE. And so as districts, you want to make sure that you're maintaining regular contact with your First Steps point of contact or coordinator to ensure that that data that you have is accurate. And districts should also be aware and include in the reporting any children who may qualify through Part B state-funded preschool program. And if you have additional questions, as I said, Amy Mays is the indicator 12 lead, and then Jen Riley, who many of you all may work with too. She also is a good point of reference to help you with that, making sure that you get all students identified.
Typing their email in the chat.
Thank you. And then finally, one last thing, as part of the data collection efforts for 12, districts are highly encouraged to consider adding First Step student numbers to the special education area within the Infinite Campus Enrollment tab. And by doing this, this will allow the district and KDE to more easily access Indicator 12 student information from Infinite Campus without us having to ask districts to ferret out this information at a moment's notice. So you won't be getting a million emails or phone calls about trying to find that number. And then this also assists when there's a lot of district turnover, and new staff will be able to identify students by sorting through those first step student numbers.
So I have had questions about creating a report to pull Indicator 12 data in Infinite Campus, but until we don't have the data, we don't have the first steps data in Infinite Campus to be able to create that report. So we may be able to do it if we can get all districts to put the TOTS ID in, or the first steps ID. But until then, as far as I know, districts just keep a list of their own students because we just don't have that data to pull it. Okay, thank you, Lauren and Jackie. Appreciate it. And if you think of anything else, just jump in. Okay, so I'm going to talk now. I'm just going to go into my regular beginning of year reporting, or sorry, end of year reporting. So I'm going to talk about Indicator 11 and 13. So the Indicator 11 and 13, I will email that out next week. So you should expect that Monday or Tuesday. We've been waiting to clean up some things on Indicator 12 and just make sure everything's good to go. So that will be coming out very soon. For the Indicator 11 report, you want to, the best thing you can do is run the SPED evaluation detail report, which is under KDE report, KY State reporting KDE reports. And that'll give you your list of students for Indicator 11. And you're going to have to submit this through the DOS Secure file transfer. I got an email yesterday saying there might be some issues with that. So please let me know if you're having issues with it. But if you don't have access to this, your WAPOC, Web Apps Administrative Point of Contact, needs to put you into Person Role Manager as the Director of Special Education. That's the only way you can get access to this. So, and then they can tell you what your login information is and all that as well. So for Indicator 11, this just explains how to get to the report, Kentucky State Reporting, KDE reports, and then you're going to click Generate Report. And this report is not perfect, and I will tell you it's not perfect. There are several reasons why it's not perfect. One is for preschool, it just does not pull the days right because preschools have a different calendar. They don't run Monday through Friday, 6 hours a day. So it doesn't pull them correctly. Some it does, but most it doesn't. If you have 2 evaluations in 1 year, the report is going to show the student twice. If you have 2 consents and 2 evaluations in 1 year, the report is going to pull the student 4 times. So what I want to let you know is this report is very useful, but there may be issues. But really, what we don't look at this report unless there's a reason for us to look at this report. So the report that we get your data from is the spreadsheet that I'm going to send to you and that you're going to upload to me. So that is really the report that we look at. So what you're going to do is you're going to run the SPED evaluation detail report. You are going to choose 10% of the students on there. And you're going to put those on the spreadsheet that I'm going to send you next week. So this gets a little confusing, but when I'm going to show you the screenshot of the report in a minute. It may make more sense. So if the date of consent for initial evaluation says missing consent date, then that means the consent date is missing and you need to put it in right here. Date of consent for initial evaluation. So a lot of times people create the report and don't put in this date. It's not required. We can't make it required. Infinite Campus cannot make that required. But it has to be put in there. So that's why we ask you, that's why we mark it missing consent date. And then to let you know, you need to go back and put that in. If it says missing eligibility date and there is no eligibility yet, it's okay that it says missing eligibility date because you don't have one. Now, if you do have one and there's no date, that could be a problem. But if you haven't completed the eligibility, it's okay that this says missing eligibility date. So this is a lot of words, but that's basically all that's saying. Is don't freak out just because the report is orange, unless there's really a reason to freak out. And this is what the indicator 11 report looks like. This is just an example. So we have, again, we're asking you to enter the same information. You're going to have to put in the SSID, the student's name, all that. And then if they are over the 60-day timeline, we're asking you to explain why they're over the 60-day timeline. So this is just an example of that. For indicator 13, I am going to suggest that you run the QA SPED report and then just filter for all students who are ages 16 and older, and then you can use those to select your 10% to put on the spreadsheet. So that's indicators 11, 12, and 13. We did 12 first, but so I hope this makes sense. Nothing's really changed. We've just beefed up the indicator 11 report a little bit. And of course, we've added the indicator 12 spreadsheet in there. For personnel and placement, this goes into GMAP. We are required to collect and report to the federal government all special education teachers, paraprofessionals, and related service providers who are employed or contracted for all students ages 3 through 21. And this
Amy,
is, yeah.
Before you go on anymore with personnel, will you clarify the number of students who would be input for 11, 12, and 13, how some can have samples and some can't, and the reason why?
Yes, thank you. So for indicator 11, I'm going to ask you to choose 10% of the students on there, but if you should provide no less than 10 and no more than 50. So if you're a big district and you have 600 students, you're not going to give me 60 students. You're going to give me 50 because 50 is the maximum. And the same is true if you only have 12 students, you need to give me 10 because it's a minimum of 10. If you only have 7 students, then give me all 7. So, and that's true for 11 and 13. For indicator 12, it's all student. You need to be looking at all students. It's not a sample size.
And that is not a Kentucky thing. We did attempt to see if we could get a random sampling for the indicator 12, and that's not allowable with OSEP. So know that we did check into that, but it wasn't allowable. I know some of you asked about that last cycle.
Yeah, it would be nice, but yeah, it's a federal requirement. So in the indicator 11, 12, and 13 spreadsheet, there is an instructions tab at the bottom. So this will explain how you do each of the indicators. So this should help you if you just read these instructions. We've revised these over the years and hopefully they make sense. I just want to show you this as well, the cover sheet. This right here where it says enter the total number of initial consents to evaluate. This only provides information for indicator 11. So if you say you have 25 students who have an initial consent to evaluate, then it'll tell you you need to provide 10 because you have to provide a minimum of 10. If you have 5, it'll tell you you need 5. If you have 712, it'll tell you you need to provide 50. But this is only for indicator 11, but you can type in the number here for indicator 13 as well, because it's the same calculation for that. And for indicator 11, there's one more thing. We did this last year, and I'm not sure if that information is in the spreadsheet, but if you have students for whom you have obtained consent to evaluate less than 60 days before the school year ends. So let's say right now, today, you have a student that the ARC is meeting on and you get consent to evaluate from the parent. You don't have 60 school days left in the school year. So, but that student is still eligible to be reported. So that should be, you should enlist that student on the list where you're going to choose your random 10%. And then we will follow up in the fall to make sure that you have completed the evaluation on that student in a timely manner. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So for personnel, you are going to report the percentage of time each person works specifically with students with disabilities. So I had somebody mention PE. Well, if they're doing like PE, I guess that's a bad example, a school nurse maybe. If a school nurse is working with students just with disabilities for a specific period of time, you only count that time. You don't count the time they're employed all day long. So those are things you need to take a look at. And here's an example. So works with students with disabilities for 3 hours out of a 60-hour day. So that would be a half FTE, 6-hour day, not 60-hour day. If they work 4 hours out of a 6-hour day, that's 2/3 or 0.67. But then if you add those two teachers together, you get 1.17 FTE. And this is an example of what the report looks like. So I sent out a spreadsheet earlier in the year with the child count information that allowed you to put the information into a spreadsheet and just save it, just hold on to it, so that when GMAP opens up in May, you can just take that information out of there and put it into GMAP. This year we are reporting by preschool and grades K through 14, not ages 3 to 5, so it's not quite as confusing as it was in the past. So we have this, and then this is what it looks like for service providers, and we do that for all ages 3 to 21, if they're working with students with disabilities. And then for the placement that we ask you to report, this is to determine your private school proportionate amount. When you're entering these numbers, you are going to do the top one by age, because that's what OSEP says we have to do. And then this one right here, if the students are not in kindergarten or above, you don't include them. So it says preschool, but it's really 5 years old. that one's by age as well. Okay, so the Safe Schools report. For the Safe Schools report, again, we're using Safe Schools out of Infinite Campus, so you can run the Safe Schools report, and this is how you do it. This is supposed to be one long item, but it doesn't fit. Is fully certified in special education for preschool. Are you considering IECE? That is a question I need to answer ask the preschool folks. So I will ask that and get back to you. And when I send out the information on the recording of this presentation, I will answer that question if I can. Any other questions about placement or personnel before I move on? Okay, so for the Safe Schools report, this is what it looks like when you run it. The date ranges are wrong, but you are going to select this school. It should default to this school year. You want to select detail. If you only want students who have IEPs, you can check active student at time of active special ed at time of incident. And that will show you only students with IEPs. Make sure you've selected all the schools and you click run extract. And that'll give you the list of students. Now, I realize this report is huge, and I am working on some guidance that will go out, but it's still going through the channels, so it may not go out before the end of the school year, but hopefully it'll be available as soon as possible. So again, we look at students who were, when we look at removals, we look at the percentage of a day. So those calculations are in Infinite Campus. We have IEP at time of incident. So if a student has an IEP at the time of an incident, he's considered special ed. If later he has another incident and he no longer has an IEP, he's not considered special ed for that incident. So it literally looks at the IEP at the time of the incident. And then this is the link to how you're going to verify that you've reviewed your discipline data. Things to look at in Safe Schools. These are things you want to look for. You want to look for long restraints. You want to look for long suspensions. Maybe those are accurate. Maybe they're not. I'm not trying to be vague because it really does depend on the student. You know, maybe for one student, if you look at it and say, wait, he was only suspended for 1 day. I thought he was out for like 3 months. You know, that might be wrong, but another student, you might look at it and say he was suspended for 3 months, but it should have been just 1 day. So you have to look at it by individual student. And I recommend that this is done at the school level because the teachers and the administrators in the school know those students better than you probably do at central office. You want to look for overlapping or duplicate resolutions. You just have to sort it and look at it. Unreasonable data, multi-day restraints, extremely long suspensions. I've seen, you know, 3-month suspensions for getting a pencil. That's probably not accurate. But those are things that if you look and see that this student was suspended and for a long time, then it's probably, you know, and you don't think it's right, then you need to talk to somebody. We have the Tableau data visualizations, and there's one that I recommend that you look at specifically, and this is a link to how to get access to it if you don't have access. And it's a really useful tool. When it first came out, it may not have been all that accurate, but now it is accurate as of midnight the day before. So it's a really good, it's not the end all be all, but it'll help you find errors for sure. So it's something that you want to take a look at. So this is what it looks like. So if I look at this fake student right here, and I see that this student has an alternative placement for 10 days and an out of school suspension for 8.8 days. So that's 18.8 days for a total. So these are things that you want to look at. When you go in, this defaults to not special ed, but you can change on the right-hand side. You can filter it to only show students with IEPs. You can change it to default to 5 days, 1 day, 0 days, whatever. You can change it so that it'll show, you know, however many days you want. I think they set it to default at 8, so you can see which students are getting close to the 10 days when you're going to need to do a manifestation determination. It defaults at state codes. I think you want to change that default to say safe schools, so that it'll show all the safe schools codes here. But this is a really useful tool. I've done training on this recently in a couple of co-ops. So, you know, if any of the other co-op directors want me to, I'm happy to show you. For the behavior data collection, remember that we have an in-school removal, which includes lunch, recess, and study periods, as well as, you know, sitting in the in-school suspension room. We have a state code of in-district removal, which was new 2 years ago, I believe, or maybe last year. And this is mapped to, this is considered for special education federal reporting. It is considered an out-of-school removal. For safe schools reporting, it's considered an in-school removal, because OSEP considers if the student is sent outside of their school, like an alternative school or something like that, that's an out-of-school removal. That's how OSEP looks at it. So that's something we need to keep in mind. And this is a link to the behavior data standards. So again, INSR and INDR. All of these will be included in the Safe Schools report. If you have an INSR or INDR resolution that's less than half a day, it won't be included in the school report card, but it will in our reporting. IAES, this is one that causes trouble every year. I often see students with IAES resolutions who don't have IEPs, and Infinite Campus actually now will pop up and say the student is not eligible, or is probably not eligible for an IAES because they don't have an IEP and they don't have any paperwork, special education referral to make them eligible. But for some reason, they're showing up anyway. So it's something that people need to be aware of. Any other Safe Schools questions? You guys are very quiet today. I think you're tired. I know I am. Okay, so for exiting data, this hasn't changed. So you're going to go to the state reporting special ed exit report. If you want to find out about how to exit a student, you can go to the Special Education Processes Data Standard. This is the link to it. And this is the link to how you're going to verify your data. for 21-22. So when you run your exit report, make sure it's, well, it should only contain students ages 14 to 21. If you have a student on there with a disability of developmentally delayed or DD, which is code number 15, I'm not sure if you see I'm not sure exactly what you see in the report, but that should not happen because you shouldn't have any student over the age of 8 listed as developmentally delayed. So there's probably a problem if that happens, and you need to go back and look at the paperwork. Any questions about exiting? Okay. Make sure, I'm gonna just take this time and remind you to make sure to go in and look and see if at the beginning of the year, there were any students who were no-shows. If there were students who were no-shows and they did not return, they did not come back later in the year, then those students need to have special ed. If they had an IEP at the time, they need to have special ed exit date and special ed exit status entered. And I believe there is a report that I think the districts have access to it, and I'll send information about that. Again, when I send out the recording link for this. But I think there's a no-show report that you can run and see if there were any students who were listed as no-show at the beginning of the school year. And please don't forget to go in and put in your special ed exit date and special ed exit status at the end of the year. Because if you don't put that in there, it causes all kinds of issues. And this is where your dropout data and your graduation data come from. So if you don't put in your special ed exit status, you are likely not going to have any graduates, and that is not a good thing. Okay, for child count, I'm just going to go through this quickly just as a reminder, because everything you do throughout the year affects child count. Robin says it would be great if they would add a column for special ed so you don't have to check all the no-shows. Robin, I think I'm going to need you to email me on that one, so I can see specifically what you're talking about. But I'm happy to help any way I can because I know this report is cumbersome. Okay, so for child count, for a student to appear on child count, they have to be enrolled in the district on the child count date, December 1st. They have to have a locked IEP. They have to have a valid Kentucky evaluation eligibility determination date less than 3 years before child count. Students who have an N-type enrollment should not be marked state exclude. That's not true. I thought I took that out. It's okay to mark students state exclude beginning in the 21-22 school year. I apologize for that. I will check that. But students who are listed as grade 95 or 96 or 97 or 20, if that grade code, excuse me, grade code does not match the student's age, that's a problem. So I saw a lot of districts enter students as grade 95 if they were homeschooled. We have to have those listed correctly. So if the student is 7, put them in the proper grade. Don't leave them in grade 95. So of course, we all know if the student is 5 years old and in kindergarten, they should have a special ed setting beginning with 6, such as 6A, 6B. You should be getting a warning now on Infinite Campus that says, hey, pay attention to this. So please pay attention. If the student is 5 years old and in preschool, their LRE should begin with 3. This is just a list of how to, if a student moves in from out of state, this is how you're going to do this. You're going to create a Kentucky eligibility, put the data in from the sending state. Do the same thing with the IEP. Use only the official documents and make sure that eligibility determination is dated before the child count date. One thing about child count or about just students with IEPs in general, the state data roster and review, state data review and roster, SDRR, is open right now. I sent out an email about this a couple weeks ago and asked you to enter or run your reports and make sure there are no IEPs that are unlocked or students who are missing, or IEPs that are missing their primary disability or anything like that. So please do that. And people are reaching out to me and asking for help, and I can tell them what's wrong, but they're going to have to go to you to fix it because they don't have access to change the IEPs, or probably not. Maybe in some districts they do. So that's something that I need people to look at soon. These are just some common errors. Okay, so KDE will run the child count report on December 5th, 2022. So any changes to records after December 2nd will not be reflected in the child count report. And that is after close of business, after like 4 o'clock on December 2nd. The child count report will ignore students enrolled in calendars that are marked exclude. Calendars that are marked exclude. If you mark an enrollment state exclude, those students will show up on the child count report, and that's fine. Be sure grades for students within enrollments are accurate. So again, just like I mentioned earlier, if you have grade 95 and the student is 14 years old, that's probably not accurate. So I need you to make them the appropriate grade. All students with primary school service plans, private school service plans, should have a setting of 6J private school. And actually I think if you create a private school service plan, it actually will not allow you to change the educational setting or the LRE. It is defaulted to 6J. And preschool students are not eligible for private school service plans. So if you have a student in preschool and you are providing services for that student, and that's not required, but if you are, then make sure that student has an IEP, not a private school service plan. Please go back to in enrollments. Did you say that in enrollments be marked state exclude? Prefer, from what I've found, districts prefer that the in enrollments be state exclude. I don't care if they're marked state exclude or not. They're going to show up on my report either way. But districts prefer that they are marked state exclude because it causes extra burden when they're not marked state exclude, because they show up on attendance reports and seek reports and those sorts of things. So I hope that helps. It doesn't, either way is okay with me. That's what I get for using a previous report or PowerPoint and changing it. I left that in. Okay. So that is our end of year training. Let's see, if a student transfers to homeschool, how do you mark their exit date? There is not, you mark it as moved known to continue. Moved known to continue. Or transfer to regular education. Depending on the situation. If the parent is declining services, it'll be transferred to regular ed. And if anybody has anything else to add to that, I'm happy to listen or allow you to speak.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Michelle Blick again. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to this enrollment thing again. So you're stating that it doesn't matter what districts do on that part?
For the state exclude,
Okay.
no, it doesn't.
So there
So-
doesn't, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just making sure there doesn't need to be any type of consistency among the state regarding this. And, you know, if one district does something different and then another one does something different, that's not messing up anything for anyone.
It really depends on the preference of the district. That,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if a student transfers to your district and they're not marked state exclude and you want them to be marked state exclude, you can just go into your enrollment and mark them state exclude. But if it's a private school student, then they're likely not transferring districts anyway.
So are IC clerks or those over this IC information besides special ed aware of this?
Yes.
Okay, that it's a preference then? Okay.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
used to say market state exclude, and then we went through a phase where some people in KDE thought that thought it should not be marked state exclude because you're really giving up a little bit of money when you do that, because those students do earn money when they earn seek money for the few minutes they're in the district every week.
Okay.
So some people were saying they shouldn't do that because they're losing out on money. But what I've heard from DPPs is it's not worth the money for the amount of paperwork it causes.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you.
welcome. And I have talked to, I mean, all offices in KDE are aware of this. We've all had the same conversations.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.